Hey everybody, it's getting almost turkey season here in North Carolina, and I got a couple videos that I'm gonna work on today and try to get posted out there for y'all. But the first thing I want to do is I want to kind of go back to a video that I actually shot a couple weeks ago, and that video is actually the string and cable change on my new Rx4. So y'all haven't seen it yet, but I actually ordered a Rx4 this year. The guys up at Grafton Archery ordered one for me back in January. That finally came in. So what I do every time I get a new bow, and I'm sure I'll catch a lot of flack for it, I have in past videos, but when I get a brand new bow, the first thing I do is I order a set of strings and cables from America's Best. That's just something that I do. I'm not saying that you have to do that. But I personally feel like America's Best strings and cables are the best strings and cables on the market. And if I'm gonna shoot a brand spanking new bow, why not shoot the best strings and cables out there? So that's my reasoning behind why I changed strings and cables. Also, I like to have a spare set of strings and cables, and I would definitely recommend this to any of you guys that go out of state on any kind of hunts throughout the year. I would definitely recommend having a spare set of strings and cables with you. Even if you can't set them up yourself, you can usually find an archery shop within a couple hours of wherever you're hunting for the most part. And if you already have those strings and cables on hand, you're already one step ahead. If something happens on the trip, if your broadhead cuts your string, if you fall, bust your string or whatever on a rock, whatever it may be, I definitely recommend having a spare set of strings and cables, so that way you're not relying on that shop to possibly have to order you a set. So with those two things being said, like I said, I think America's Best strings and cables are the best strings and cables on the market. Especially the Platinum Series. The Platinum Series is what I shoot. They've got a 2-year warranty against peep rotation and stretch, as well as they use 452X string material, which in most cases will actually afford you a little bit faster feet per second on your bow over your stock strings and cables. Not always, but for the most part. Another thing that America's Best does that I think is just, you know, cream of the crop, you know, top of the top, they give you the option for optional custom colors on your speed nocks. On your string, as well as they place your speed nocks back in the custom or in the stock setting where your whoever your bow manufacturer, whatever bow you shoot, wherever they're supposed to be from the factory, that's where America's Best puts them. So there's other companies out there that don't even put your string nocks back on there for you, but they do. They use premium strings and cable. They use premium serving material on your end loops. They use a different material, and then on your center serving, they use a different material, both of which are specially used in those areas to create longevity of your strings and cables, keep them from fraying out. So not to be too long on this, I had a little bit of malfunctions on the camera. As far as the camera cut out on me while I was in the middle of creating this video. That's why I'm coming at you now, several weeks after actually shooting the video. I went ahead and changed strings and cables. I got that part on video, but the problem is when I was going through the tuning aspect of the bow, it was taking me so long to tune it that I didn't actually catch that on film. I caught a little bit of it, but not all of it. So I kind of want to summarize what I had going on, but I'll do that after you watch the video of me actually changing strings and cables on this bow. So with that being said, let's jump into the video. Hope you like it, and I'll catch you back here in just a little bit. Thanks for watching. Now, America's Best is pretty good about sending their strings and cables with the right amount of twists and stuff like that. And you'll notice that they have the paper clips and stuff through the ends here. And what that does is it keeps the twist from coming out of your strings and cables. So I like to do it one at a time when I change mine. So what I'm gonna do is I'll take the string, I'll go ahead and change the string, Then I'll do one set of cable and then another cable. So let's do that right now. Alright, so keep in mind when you do this, there is a top and there is a bottom. So it's easy to figure out which one is which. And your top is always going to be the one with the most amount of gap in the actual string itself. So right there, you'll notice that in that right here in the string, there's a little piece of serving material. And what that is that's where your peep sight goes. And they've got it split where it's the halfway point in the string. So you've got an even number of strands on each side of that serving material there. And then you'll also notice at the bottom here, right, let me get it. Right there was a little piece of served area, and what that does is that's where your string stop is. So that being said, there's always a top and bottom, so keep that in mind. Alright, strings on, so let's grab a set of cables. Alright, so another thing you'll notice here on the Hoyt is they have this top hat system here on the bottom. So what that is you'll have an extra piece to your strings and cables. So right here. Alright, so you'll have a little short section here, and that's where that's pretty much like your bottom yoke. That's where it goes around that top hat there. So when you order your new set, they're not going to come with that top hat, so don't lose it. And then also, it's up to you if you want to put your string silencer back in. America's Best doesn't send string silencers with your string, and that's just because they know that your strings and cables from the factory come with it. So you can just take your string silencer out and place it yourself. And that's what I do. I just try to grab an even number of strands for the most part. It's really not particular on the little rubber piece here, the little silencer. So I'll go ahead and set that back in. Alright, so that's in place down there at the bottom. And once you let the tension off your limbs, everything will cinch back in tight. So let's go down here and go ahead and change the yoke cable here. So you'll notice with the new design on the Hoyts this year, they have the double string stop on the bottom, and that's why they have the yokes. They're using the yoke system that they're using now. Because of that, they get a lot better back wall. So it's actually a very, very nice design. So let's take this bottom yoke here off where the top hat is. We'll take that off the cam. Take these off here, a little paper clip. And you'll notice on this top hat, it just kind of locks your strings and your cable there kind of locks into that top hat so that it doesn't pop off. Now what I'm going to do is I'm only going to hook one side, because when I pull this top yoke off, I'm going to have to feed it around this little bottom yoke here. And that also has a groove that it locks into. And then same for this here. It has an option to run a string silencer in it, and I'm going to put mine back in just because that's the way Hoyt sent it. So what they actually do with this one is they've got this yoke here where you can run a drop away rest into the split of the yoke. So with the string silencer, they split this yoke in half and then split the half into a half, and that's where they put your string silencer at, so that you can still use that split, the main split. You can still use it for a drop away rest. So let's run that back through. Go ahead and clip that in. That's locked in. And I'm going to go ahead and connect this bottom yoke up. There we go. That's hooked up. So now with that all hooked up, I'm going to take this bottom yoke, I'm going to run it through the roller guard here. And then I'm also going to do the same thing with this one, with the new set. And if you don't want to run it through like I am, you can always pop these roller guards off, which is the way a lot of guys do it. And I would definitely, if you're not shooting a brand spanking new bow, if you're not changing strings and cables on a brand new bow, I would just recommend go ahead and taking and loosen those rollers up so that there's not a chance of you taking and burring up your new set of strings and cables, just in case the rollers here have gotten a nick on them. And I have seen that where guys pull their strings and cables through and actually put a burr, and there's a burr on that, and they'll actually burr up their new set of strings and cables. So once again, while you're putting this top yoke on, these cables, try to make sure that you're not undoing the twist in your strings and cables. Try to keep them fairly close. And you'll notice when we get done with this, we'll end up having to tune this bow to get our cam lean and all that stuff correct. So it's not super critical, but I do try to keep it pretty close. Alright, so now we'll take this top yoke or bottom yoke off. We'll run it through. And these are the same way. There's a top and there's a bottom. So the top on this Hoyt is going to have the longest section of serving. The bottom is going to have the short section. So keep that in mind. There is a top and a bottom once again on this cable set here. So I'll go ahead and hook this top one up. And some bow companies their bows are just a little bit more aggravating to change strings and cables on, but the Hoyts are super easy. They're pretty self-explanatory. So the reason that I do them one at a time is just so I don't forget the way the strings and cables wrap around the cam. So some strings and yokes and stuff and cables, they wrap differently, and when you change a bunch of them, sometimes you'll get confused on the order that they go in. So I just do them one at a time so I never forget which way they're supposed to go. Let's see if I can pop that down in there. There we go. Alright, so before I release the pressure off of this press, I'm gonna go through it and we'll double check everything and make sure that all my ends are connected. I'm gonna make sure that everything is tracking the way it's supposed to. My strings and cables are running through my yokes or my rollers correctly, and everything looks good. So I'm gonna start relaxing the tension on this, and as I'm doing that, I'm just double checking the whole time to make sure everything's lined up. Easing the pressure off. And you should notice, if you do these yourself, you should notice if something is off. You'll start seeing your cams leaning one way weird or another. And you'll start, you may hear a pop or something like that as things kind of settle in. So don't forget to double check as you go. All right, so everything looks pretty good. All right, so right here is where we're gonna start checking our axle to axle length and our we're gonna check our axle to axle length, and we're gonna check our brace height here, just to see what everything looks like. So we're just a bump long, about a 1/16 of an inch long on the axle to axle, and we're just a little bit long on the brace height. We'll put a couple twists into our yokes and try to get the axle to axle length exactly where we want it. All right, so I'm gonna start off by putting 2 twists in the top and 2 twists in the bottom, and see if that draws it in any. Perfect. Dead on the money. Drawing just a bit over 27, and that's because I took the grip off. And draw weight is 73.8, which is what just about exactly what I want. I want 74, so let's see what it shoots right there. All right, so hopefully you got something out of that video from watching me change those strings and cables. Because I wasn't able to get the actual tuning of this bow all on film, I want to talk about a few things. So Hoyt sends their bows with the new adjustable grip, where it's specifically for people that have issues with torque on their bow. I at first thought this grip was a gimmick. I didn't think it really worked, but I will happily say that I was wrong on that, and after having to tune this bow, I realized that there is a time and a place for that grip to be used. So With that being said, I still opted to take my grip off of this bow. After shooting this bow for a couple weeks now, after changing these strings and cables, I've kind of played around with where I shoot it the best, and I wound up shooting it the best at a 27-inch draw without the grip on there. So as of right now, the grip is not on this bow. Also, I've never had so much of an issue with a bow being so grip sensitive. And that is one thing that I don't like about this bow, but I'm starting to kind of get used to it. And that's also making me a better shot. I will say that. A lot of it's error in my form, so I'm fixing that. But this bow is very, very grip sensitive, so at least for me it is anyway. A couple issues that I have with tuning this bow throughout the process is once I actually changed strings and cables on this bow, I got into the fine tuning aspect of this bow, and I was having issues with an extreme right and a little bit of high tear. And the past couple Hoyts that I've had have all had a little bit of a high tear, and that's not an issue. But the right tear I've never had, and I've shot a lot of bows. I worked at the archery shop for several years, and I tuned a lot of bows, and I haven't had this much issue with a bow tearing either right or left. That being said, I used a 400 spine arrow, I used 340s, several different 340s, different arrow lengths, as well as 300s, just trying to see what was going on with the bow, and nothing seemed to change it. So after calling Hoyt, after doing all the tuning we could do, after tuning on my right yoke, my left yoke, tuning my timing, all that stuff, we called Hoyt. Me and the guys up at Grafton called Hoyt, and the guys at Hoyt, or the people at Hoyt, I will say this, I wasn't really too impressed with the customer service aspect of it, but all things aside, took the bow apart, ended up finding out that the top axle was bent from the factory. A $1,600 bow, you should not have that issue, so that's a negative on Hoyt. I don't know how this bow came with a bent axle, but it did. After changing the axle out, I still had a weird tearing to the right. From there, we actually ended up changing the spacers on the bottom cam. This actually fixed the tear. The right tear went completely away. But what happened was it offset the cam so much that the string angle coming off the cam just was not right. We could not leave it that way. So we put the spacers back and ended up swapping the top limbs to the bottom and the bottom limbs to the top. After doing that, the bow started shooting. So I don't know why changing those made such a big difference, but it did. According to Hoyt, that should not have happened. That should not have fixed the issue, but it did. So with that being said, the way the bow is set up right now, tuning through paper as well as shooting broadheads out here out to 60 yards, which I'll show you that in a second. I got a target set up back here at 60. I got a couple other targets over here set up at a little bit shorter distances. But the way the bow's set up right now, I've got more twist in the right hand yoke than what Hoyt actually calls for. They call for the center of your arrow shaft to be centered to the bottom of your, or the center of your string when your arrow shaft is laid alongside of the cam. With the bow like that, I could not get it to tune. I had a constant right tear. So right now my arrow shaft is actually parallel with the string. Another thing that I've had to do on the past couple Hoyts I've shot is I've had to put the timing on the bottom cam just ahead of the top cam. Just ever so slightly, not by much. Maybe a 1/16 of an inch, which Hoyt, generally speaking, you're supposed to either be dead timed or just a little head on the top. With the bow set up that way, I couldn't get it to tune, so right now my bottom cam is hitting about a 1/16 ahead of the top cam. Not shooting a grip, as I said earlier, and that seems to help with my groups. It's all, that kind of thing is personal preference. It's up to you, but I will say if you're having issues with your bow tearing one way or the other, try their grip out, because it actually does work. We tried this and it actually did change the tear of the bow, so it does work. So with that being said, I hope you like the string and cable change video. I hope that if you're having issues tuning your bow, you'll get a hold of me or get a hold of the guys at Grafton and let them talk to you about it, because we went through the runner with this bow, and I'm hoping that we learned enough that we can kind of help y'all, and that's why I'm putting this video out there. I'm not trying to bash anybody, but I do think that since we had so many issues with this bow straight out of the box, maybe we can give you some insight and maybe help you on your bow. So I hate that I didn't get all the tuning on film, but what I'm going to go ahead and do to finish out this video is I'm going to actually show you a shot from 60 with my Q80 Exodus, what I'm actually running right now. And this isn't final. I'm still working on several different arrow combinations to figure out what shoots broadheads the best out of this bow. But as of right now, what I'm liking the best is a 4-fletch blazer, 90-degree offsets on those fletchings with a Q80 Exodus. And this has got the 75 grain brass insert up front. And this is a 340 spine. The arrows are cut at 26 inches. So kind of to finish out this video, I want to show you what good tuning on your bow can do if you're having issues with your broadheads not tuning. Maybe take into mind that you can tune, if you have a bow press, you can tune with your yokes on a Hoyt, which is one thing that I really like about the Hoyts in general. You have a lot more adjustability than some other brands because you can actually yoke tune. So my rest is just off centered, center of the string. Hoyt has you start out at 13/16. I started out at 13/16 and I ended up moving around just a little bit just to get my broadheads to tune. Thanks for watching, I appreciate it, and keep an eye out for the next video. I'm going to kind of get into the actual build of the bow and the accessories that I'm using on this bow. So please like and subscribe. Please check us out on Facebook and Instagram and help me grow this channel. Thank you for watching. Right there. So this one, broadhead, field tip. Field tip, 100 grain Q80 Exodus. So like I said, that's 60 yards, broadhead field tip, and new set of strings and cables. Appreciate you watching.